Hello everyone and welcome to the Reboot series. Today we have a special guest, Simon. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Steph. Hi, Ola. I'm Simon Clark. I'm one of the account directors at Thomson Reuters, working in the elite side of the business. So our software part of the organisation, and I've been at Thomson Reuters for around about 20 years.
Really good. So obviously the last 4 months have been quite challenging for a lot of businesses, and we've seen quite a lot of changes, and technology and software have been enabling businesses to do work remotely. From your point of view, what has been different and what have you found different in terms of what you do and how you deliver your services?
Yeah, sure. So I guess we've been trying to support customers working in a remote way. I think it's quite easy for a big firm, a global corporation like Thomson Reuters that is pretty well set up for remote working to forget actually many of our customers simply aren't or weren't. So some of the things that we kind of just assume are normal, like everyone having a laptop and headsets and all that kind of stuff, is actually is really challenging for businesses that traditionally have never been set up to work in that environment. Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're seeing now a shift to our customers trying to get to grips with the new norm. But for a while there, it was the kind of business continuity, trying to keep the lights on, trying to enable people to work remotely. Now the impact of that to us was that for a little while, not that many customers wanted to talk to us because they were just simply completely maxed out from a bandwidth perspective, and that was quite difficult. Me personally, as an account manager to quite a number of customers, I sent out a note and said, look, anything we can do, and I caveated that with is a genuine offer of assistance, not a sales tactic. We've got lots of different solutions. If we can initiate some of those for a client just to help them through this period, we would have been very happy to do so. But for the main, there was a period there where we didn't have a huge amount of dialogue with customers simply because they were just too busy trying to keep their, trying to get their house into order. And I think as we've seen things turn a bit of a corner and firms kind of getting to grips with that new norm, we're starting to see some renewed interest in the projects that we have on the go and looking at how firms can, I think one of the things that will come out of this, which of course we'll benefit from as a vendor, is a renewed sort of thought and focus on the use of technology to deliver legal services, right? I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but I think the themes we're hearing from kind of the operational leaders of law firms is that perhaps in over the past years there's been significant investment in the kind of physical space and offices, and perhaps an under investment in technology, and something like this really pushes that point. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Like, we've seen similar themes or ways customers have reacted. So there was definitely that sort of crisis phase, wasn't there, initially, where everyone went into panic. I need to get my team set up. I need to replicate what I have in the office in my home environment, and that's all businesses were focused on. You're right, and yeah, not always open to help, right? I'm very focused on what I'm doing, and now be interested to get your thoughts. Like, we see certainly businesses coming into this more stable phase, and almost looking at, right, well, we did all this 4 months ago to get ourselves up and running, but now we're almost let's think about, is this what we still need, or do we need more to help us? So we're almost in that audit phase, and I'm wondering, like, do you see that as well when you talk to clients? So we're looking at, we've embraced some technology, but do we need more? Is that something, the type of conversation that you see or you have with your clients?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I've actually been asked the question, you know, what's because Thomson Reuters, quite a lot of us are set up to work remotely anyway, so and that's a fairly alien concept for some of our law firms customers. So I'm being asked questions from, you know, kind of businesses around, well, what's our policy around expensing broadband, expensing office equipment, because firms are trying to battle with, well, you know, this isn't a short-term problem potentially, and how far do they want to go in enabling employees to feel that they can continue to work from home, you know, indefinitely. And you know, a couple of months ago I would have said, well, you know, presumably, you know, you're expecting this to be a short-term problem, but the response, you know, absolutely was, you know, even if COVID goes away, which obviously we all hope it does, it would be remiss of an IT director to not plan for that eventuality going forward. And I also think that because it's kind of challenged the traditional model of law firms, and in some ways proved that actually lawyers and the teams can work remotely. I think there's going to be I think it's going to be fairly challenging for, I mean, our working environment is going to change, right? And I was talking to a finance director of a firm based down in the southwest, actually not that long ago, who felt that they really weren't going to see more than 50%, their office running at more than 50% capacity. And I said, oh, you know, is that whilst COVID's going on? And she was like, no, absolutely not. That like going forward, and that so if that plays out, then you know, firms are going to need more technology to operate. And I think the biggest challenge for the lawyers, at least, is managing that legal work remotely. And it's not just actually technology to help enable that, but also culturally as well.
Yeah. I think culture is something that, you know, we've heard a lot talks about, and the way people need to switch to think out of the box. And we've interviewed some people that they have realized that they always thought it was so difficult to just have a paperless office, or, you know, being able to do their job from home. But now, because they've been forced to do it, it's not as difficult, and it's been quite a lot of people have embraced it. And like, you know, you suggested, I think there are some benefits to it. So what have you found in terms of, like, from your personal perspective, what's changed? What do you like? What have been the positive? Because there have been some positives, I think.
Yeah, there has. And I think it's you know, spending a lot more time, or, you know, for a period, all of your time at home has, you know, for many people has brought a big benefit from that kind of family environment. And I think that's something that people will be reluctant to give up, if I'm honest. Now everyone's got a different set of challenges. Some people have got kids that they're having to school, and that's, you know, and their lives are very busy as a result. Other people have found, because, you know, maybe if they live on their own and they don't have that, you know, and they're perhaps they don't have that the social aspect to their life, that actually they're relatively quiet, and that brings with it some major challenges as well. And certainly as a business, Thomson Reuters, I feel, have done very well at making the office available for those people who want to go back to work in a very limited way. I mean, they're being very restrictive in terms of the numbers of people that can be at the office, and obviously all of the relevant PPE and procedures are in place there. But to support those people who really want to be somewhere, you know, working, who can't work from home for whatever reason, and they're also, you know, and I think all firms, you know, all corporations need to do this. They're also very good at, you know, considering the I guess the mental health aspect of this and psychological aspect of this, which I think that's a benefit. I think it's really made corporations think about that mental health side of things, and start to think about welfare of their employees. And I'm not suggesting for a second that wasn't already a consideration. I just think it's really brought it to light.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. But, like, you know, again, I've used this word before, like being people centric, right? So it's almost like there's a greater emphasis on what the employees need, right? Because I agree that they're talking, you know, understanding and talking about the mental well-being of our employees is definitely something that business owners, care about, but not necessarily understanding how to translate that into real action. But now I think almost like employees themselves are dictating and influencing what they need and how they want to work. And I guess that does then lead into then how do you, as business owners or senior business decision makers, how do you then enable your employees to work in the way that they want to work? And then like your FD example, will offices ever go back to being how they were? Probably not, and
No.
that's not a bad thing either, right?
No, I think it seriously challenges work, the framework around and structure around the working routine as we know it. And my reference to being at Thomson Reuters for 20 years was, I've not seen anything like this before in my working life. Even when we've been through a recession in that period, but these things happen more gradually. This was it felt quite overnight. And I mean, our organisation is very well connected with governments globally particularly because of the news side of Thomson Reuters. So we get some very good advice. So that's been great, and we've made some calls really super early on certain things that at the time it was like, well, really, that seems a bit of a knee jerk, but actually it's played out to show that we were well equipped and well informed. But yeah, I think I was talking to a managing partner of a London firm, or an ex-managing partner of a London firm, around about just into lockdown, and he was saying that his view is that where once upon a time lawyers are expected to be in the office every day, actually there's going to be flexibility that will benefit the staff and the firms, whereby generally, if people have got the right environment at home, generally people can actually be more productive. And if you've got lawyers that can potentially do 4 days work a 4-day week from home and have a day a week off to spend time with their family or do whatever they want to do, but can sort of generate the same work level and output, and the cost is therefore reduced for the firm, and the work-life balance is better for the employee, then it's kind of a win-win. And I think that this gives the opportunity to really shake up the traditional model. I mean, for me personally, to take you to question, Steph, I mean, I've worked from home for years and years and years. So but the difficulty I have is that I'm not going out and seeing customers, whereas typically my working week would have looked like 4 days a week out on the road, so to speak, or I'm working and 1 day at home. I'm losing that kind of face-to-face interaction with customers, and I found that difficult because because in sales and account management that's quite important, and we've had to run various sales processes remotely, which have worked really well. But there's still a limit, obviously, to you're not having that conversation on the way into a boardroom or on the way out, and it's just a different environment we're operating in.
Yeah, I think it's from a sales point of view, that's something that I think is really important in terms of body language and the way that you're not able to connect at that level. I think technology is brilliant, like saves you on travel. Your footprint of green gases is probably reduced, but I do feel that is quite missing something when it comes to that personal go and see someone in person, that build that trust and relationship. I think is harder over the screen. I think everyone is sort of doing it because they have to do, but hopefully when things go back to normal, I think the balance will be better. So I think it's probably going to be a bit of both. So where before no one would have probably accepted a meeting, a Zoom or team meeting. Yeah. Now I think people are just say, yeah, okay, maybe let's do it. So it could be interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other, I referenced a challenge I feel that we've all got, from a kind of a managing customers perspective, and but that challenge exists internally as well. So you wonder what conversations are we missing by not having that conversation in a kitchen with someone when you're making a coffee about a particular client or a particular initiative that then leads to a follow up. You know, it's and the same must be true across the whole industry, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? How do you how do you replicate those, you know, or find a new way to have those conversations, and I suppose build a human personal connection, either, you know, with your colleagues, but particularly, you know, in your role as well with, you know, with your customers, right? That conversation, that walk from the lift to the meeting room, right? Or and vice versa on the way out. Like, there's all of these opportunities to build relationships. And I guess how do you replicate that in a digital environment?
I mean, we've done a I mean, when lockdown first happened, as a team, we did a kind of weekly call and a bit of a pub quiz, and that's and actually, arguably, to conversely, I understand more about my colleagues now than I did 4 months ago, because I've seen their kids in the background, or their dog, or or just what's on the on their wall, right? Like, great example. So you sort of start to build an understanding of of some of your colleagues, some of your clients, that things that I guess that you wouldn't have necessarily even come up into conversation, and so it's kind of, there's both sides of the coin, isn't there? But yeah, I'm definitely somebody. I'm fairly tactile, and I'm missing that kind of social interaction, certainly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of leads into what will the future hold? Like, and I suppose there's two ways. There's the near term. There's almost this year, and then beyond. So, what are you thinking, and even seeing and hearing about what that future kind of looks like? From your personal perspective, and Thomson Reuters as well, like, what does the next year and beyond kind of look like?
Yeah, so I think we expect we accept that our customers go through some short to medium term challenges from a revenue perspective, profitability perspective, new instructions perspective, and they're having to they will need to diversify. Their certain practice areas will the demand will fall away, and other areas the demand will get a lot stronger. So it's about to use to use an engineering term, it's about retooling their workforce to cope with that change in demand. From our business's perspective, we're managing our cost base very carefully, of course, and we want to be in the best possible position to capitalize on any opportunities the other side of that. And we see that we do anticipate firms will increase their focus in technology and platforms to deliver legal services to their clients, and particularly around the sort of client collaboration stuff. I think that the legal industry, that's perhaps, without wishing to be unfair and unkind, I think it's perhaps fairly slow generally to adopt technology. I think that's widely known, and I think this pandemic is really going to help the IT leaders in the organisations kind of to kind of get the firms to focus on technology, and paperless is a great example. So there's firms I know that have been trying to encourage their firms to go paperless for years, and then literally overnight their printing costs have disappeared. So it's it's really forced the issue. So I think we will. I think at the moment we're still in a position. I think we're still in a situation where firms are very carefully monitoring their cost base, and just trying to work out what that new norm looks like. We've got, obviously, we implement large systems, finance systems, case management systems. Those projects are being run remotely, and I'm pleased to say we've got firms going live on platforms through this period. So from a services perspective, it's not had a massive impact, other than the projects being delivered remotely. But from but undoubtedly there's been some hesitance to to commit to new projects. But I think we'll start to see that. I think we'll start to see that hesitance lift towards the end of the year. Certainly in the last quarter of the year, when firms realise that you can't just stand still, and that's but it's just I guess it's just about businesses understanding what they're redefining their requirements, right? I mean that's
the priorities. I think the like you said, the acceleration about embracing digital transformation has been forced by this COVID pandemic, and like you say, they didn't have a choice. Where before, maybe earlier age, they will probably just still look at the way they used to do things and be really so classic in a way of implementing. Now they had to adapt to this embrace a new way of working. What in terms of services and solutions, I mean, is that something that you guys seen there is an uptake, or is it something specifically that as a Thomson Reuters you can benefit a client?
Yeah, we're seeing considerable interest in cloud. So we've we've got some services that we've been offering on a cloud platform for a number of years, but we've got some other services we haven't. They've been on-prem or in private cloud arrangements, hosting managed partners. So we've it kind of ties in quite nicely to our strategy, because we're offering a finance platform 3E as a managed cloud solution, and there's a huge amount of interest in that because firms are wanting to put the onus on us, frankly, as a vendor to manage upgrades, and and I think if you can place that responsibility on the vendor, then you're assured of getting those upgrades in an incremental way, rather than firms not upgrading for a while, because it seems a level of investment the firm doesn't want to make, and then when they do upgrade, there's big costs involved. It's a big project, and there's risk that's introduced as a result. I think people are with these systems, people are starting to think in terms of your Microsofts of this world, where you just get an upgrade, or your iPhones or whatever it might be, where you get an upgrade, it happens without you even knowing about it. Yes. And you're not having to think about it, because you're making those incremental changes rather than. So I think anything that's reducing the burden on the IT and support services from the law firms is going to be a winner. And that's that cloud debate at law firms has been very emotive, because there's a concern around obviously data security. But I think that there's a realization that actually the likes of Microsoft and Azure, as an example, that they invest $1 billion a year in platform security, and that's something that even the largest law firms in the world couldn't compete with, right? So I think firms are realizing there's a safer pair of hands out there potentially for it.
Yeah, it's I suppose the natural fear or hesitancy, isn't it, of moving from on-prem to the cloud, is that security, where my data resides, access information. But you have to say, like, what would we have done if we didn't have cloud and we didn't have SaaS-based applications, right? When all your on-prem stuff is locked behind you, your closed office doors. So actually, there again, proof is in the pudding, like the realization. We've been through this massive proof of concept, haven't we? And seeing the benefits of cloud-based applications firsthand, and my information is accessible, is secure, and my system, my platforms are always up to date, right? So you've had the best possible proof of concept for your solutions, right?
Yeah.
Or you think you have anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult, in firms' business continuity planning. I think this was probably something that was maybe for a lot of firms, we need to think about this, but the risk is pretty low that there'd been a situation where their employees couldn't physically travel to the office, but I was having a conversation recently with an IT director who was saying, I guess the only thing that's really impossible to plan for is a situation where we don't have connectivity at all, and that's an interesting thought. Like, if this, and I suppose as a follow up to that, if this had happened 5 years ago, I would have struggled. I live in a very rural location, and my internet connection here is poor at best. And and that's changed in the last 5 years. And I think that's actually a big consideration for some of our customers who are trying to manage employees in areas where even more rural than this, where they have very limited broadband connection. And what does that mean for calls like this? And so it's timings wise, there is, just a few years ago, and this would have been a lot more challenging for our customers.
True. That's a great point, actually, cloud and the connectivity and high speed broadband and that, I suppose we take it for granted in more urban areas, but it's been a perennial challenge, hasn't it, been for rural communities. And actually, the onus is now on the networks to ensure we have that strong, reliable connectivity, because you're right, it underpins everything, right? If you can't connect, then it does pose a challenge.
It has been highlighted for a long time within many years ago from many governments about making sure rural areas have the same access, because it's depleting their way of just getting the business. It could be any law firms, or it could be a shop, online shop, or it could be anything that without an internet connection nowadays, you would be not be able to compete with other businesses they have an internet connection. So I think it's been a good way for the government to realize that actually, yes, we need to connect rural areas. We need to give them access to faster internet connection, because everyone is at a par. Otherwise, you'd be at a disadvantage. You might live in a nice, beautiful Devon village, but you can't do anything because you won't be able to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the kind of property demand, right, for the kind of the provincial areas, because you wonder whether that kind of commuter belt around the major cities in England and globally, probably, whether that will just increase because people will be expecting to commute a lot less. So they may make some lifestyle choices around being able to work, remotely. Now, then you have, and this is a really interesting question, actually. What does this mean to firms that are outside of London that are trying to attract talent? Because actually, does this really help them get that talent from people that I guess would have once upon a time felt lawyers, up and coming lawyers felt that they wouldn't need to be in London or major cities, whereas now actually potentially they can work elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. I think it is there are a few firms that they have been adapting to this agile working, where you don't really have an office and you have different working hours, so you can choose to work 3 or 4 hours a day and then don't work. So will be quite interesting to see how this concept develops now, and we can look into it.
Yeah, interesting times ahead.
Cool. Well, Simon, I think we can talk for hours on end. I know you like, but tell us, I know you're a big sport fan, motorsports. Have you been coping with the lack of events this summer, and what's happening in the Porsche Club and the races are you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a very disappointing start to the season in that it was all postponed. It felt very about as first world problems get. So I couldn't really grumble about it, given what's going on. And I feel massively grateful that we are going to be doing some racing this year. And in fact, that season started. It's I guess the challenge. I'm very lucky with sponsorship, including SP1. IT solutions. I guess the challenge we've got is what's the right level of engagement with clients, right? Because I don't think certainly the first couple of rounds this year, which has been this month, so a couple of weeks ago and again this weekend, you know, I've not felt like I can really encourage customers to attend from a spectating perspective. They're allowed to, but I just am not sure it's the right thing to do. Kind of, I guess, from a personal perspective and also from a corporate responsibility perspective as well. That said, I've been really pleased that customers have contacted me asking for tickets, to the point where I was telling a customer initially that there was going to be no spectators, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't get your ticket because you can't come. And they responded by saying, well, we can buy them online. So, you know, somebody's not somebody's not being truthful here. And it turned out that it just turned out that the circuit was making an assumption that they would be able to. You know, I think this has been a problem across the industry. The guidance is because of the nature of what's happened. The guidance hasn't been that clear, right? And but it's wonderful to be back on a circuit, and hopefully, and we've had some really good customer engagement already, and hopefully we can do a lot more as the season progresses. And you know, we have to remember that motorsport is a hobby for me, right? And I love it, but we have to remember there's an entire industry that's their livelihood's based on it. There's you know, tens of thousands of people who you know, from circuit organisers to marshals to, you know, every facet of it. You know, the supply chain, everything is reliant on that industry going back and racing. So, and I think, you know, we all feel. I think generally this pandemic has made people appreciate each other better. You know, and I think we all, you know, that is a positive thing. I think about, and sorry, this is a bit off topic, but I think about all of these team meetings that I'm setting up and presentations I'm doing, and sometimes we have technology issues. Touch wood, generally technology is pretty robust, but sometimes we do. You know, if that kind of thing happened in a boardroom, you know, we'd all be pretty disappointed and feel under pressure. But I think people have, there's a bit of, you know, there's a bit of give and take, and I think everyone's being a bit more patient with each other, and in every, you know, work life and in our personal lives, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, so thankfully our technology has held up today. I'd say, it was fascinating conversation, Simon. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks for the invite. Nice to talk to you both.
Yeah, thank you. Speak to you soon.